Yeah. 10-4.
10-4.
Yeah, Guy. Welcome, everybody. It's the Spit Podcast. It's early in the morning. David is taking the crust out of his eyeballs right now as we speak. And it is also Wednesday, March 17th, which marks, in this country and perhaps globally, St. Patrick's Day, which I don't know what to make of St. Patrick's Day. What are your thoughts on St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah, you're right. It falls on a different day in other parts of the world. They celebrate St. Patrick's Day in June.
Do they really?
No, I'm just kidding. It's the same everywhere. It's not an American holiday.
I mean, is there St. Patrick's Day in Russia?
I don't know that they celebrate it everywhere. I'm just saying wherever they do celebrate it, I think it's the same day. You're asking what my take is. I have never gone to a bar at 7 a.m. to drink green beer. Occasionally I will have corned beef and cabbage. And when I do, I'm glad that I did. And I wish that I had it more frequently. I like soda bread, since you're a bread connoisseur.
I just made some bread this morning, actually. I'm in the middle of folding my bread. I had corned beef and cabbage soup a couple of nights ago.
How's that?
It's pretty good. It was pretty good. Seaside Market outside there. I enjoy getting a bowl of hot soup and sitting out there with my wife and people watching at Seaside Market. It's a lot of fun. But this particular day was freezing. It was that night a couple nights ago where we had like 30-mile-per-hour onshore winds and about 50 degree. And it was like wind chill factor of 30. But I was sitting out there. I met a friend of mine, Bob Campy, who's making a film on Dick Brewer, a documentary film on Dick Brewer. And we just kind of sat and chatted about filmmaking and storytelling and stuff. It was cool.
Tell us about the film. What do you know? And obviously Brewer's still alive. Has he gotten interviews with Brewer?
I don't know. Well, let me tell you what I do know. So yeah, the film is a documentary about Dick Brewer. He has gotten interviews from all of the major players. He has been on Kauai numerous times to film Dick and to film the people that need to be, the talking heads that need to be in the film to sort of discuss what happened. And we talked about story arc and where's the conflict is and where's the resolution and all of that. And I think I haven't seen the film, so I can't comment on its quality, but Bob's a good guy and an established storyteller and filmmaker. And he's done a bunch of productions for Netflix and stuff like that. So he's legit. And we'll see where it takes us. There's definitely a lot of drama in Dick Brewer's life. So there's no lack of conflict. And I think some of it people might not know about.
I don't know it.
Yeah, well, I don't want to spoil the party here, but there's been some real tragic events regarding Dick and his family. And so that stuff will be revealed, I'm sure. And yeah, we were just kind of talking about, he was actually looking for somebody to via voiceover the young Dick Brewer because he's got some of the documentary has actors to act out certain parts of it. Yeah,
sounds like a big production.
It is. It's a big production. It's pretty much more or less, I think it's more or less wrapped up. I'm sure there's some loose ends like music licensing and all that crap, but yeah.
I was going to ask you about podcasts. Do a segue into a podcast chat. Where have all the podcasts gone? Where's the Ockcast? Even Derek, Riley, and Chaz's Dirty Water I haven't seen in a while. Like I feel like maybe you asked me a year ago or maybe even longer now about the new influx, because there was a whole bunch that I can't even remember now, by the way. And I said, You know what? Ask me after 20 episodes. Like, it's a labor of love, and a lot of people get hot and heavy into it, but they tend to fizzle. Where are all the podcasts, Scott Bass?
This is a great question, and they're probably fizzling, and it's easy to do. As you know, when COVID hit, I sort of took a back seat on my boardroom podcast because there was just an influx. It just felt like, you know what, I don't want to be a part of this sort of like scurrying to to the content, and so I just backed out of it, and I wanted to sit back on the sidelines and watch it all happen. And you know what? We're in full flight here, you and I. You've constantly been a marker of consistency, and the Surf Splendor Network is powerful, and kudos to you. But the other podcasts, I have no idea. I actually don't listen to surf podcasts.
I know, me neither.
I very rarely do. I should. I want to listen to the one with Jamie and those guys from
Tyler.
New York, right?
Tyler.
Are they from Florida?
New
Tyler, yeah, Brower. Is it Brower or Brewer? Brower?
Brewer.
Because I love history, you know, and it seems like they've got a big history spin, and I love that stuff. And that's actually what the Dick Brewer, to me, the Dick Brewer film, it needs to be told, because there's guys that are shaping boards right now that are 20 something years old that maybe have heard of Dick Brewer. I bet there's some that don't even know who he is, which is a Travis Sham mockery if that's the case. But I just feel like, you know, it's sort of, it's so funny, you know, like when you're 30, you're like, oh, history, whatever, I don't give a shit about it. And then as you get older, like at least for me, as I get older, I'm like, wow, history is the most important thing. You know, it's like the lights finally come on, you know, it's kind of trite, but it is what it is, you know. And so I'm stoked on their podcast, and I think that this Dick Brewer thing is important. And I think it's important for us to do a little bit of history on our show. In fact, I have a quiz for you and the listeners today.
Great.
Yes.
I'm terrible at these. Before we get to the quiz, I will say you can't even fault the 30-year-old for not knowing who Dick Brewer is, because you could fault us for not educating them about that. But you can become a surfer now. Sadly, you can just get your board at Costco. You can show up, and there's, you know, no Kook U. We haven't instituted Kook U yet or got it licensed by the government, and as an educational institution. And so you can easily just do the thing without having all the same exposures that you and I had through the magazines. You know, like you could just follow maybe Ben Gravy on Instagram, and that psychs you up, or on YouTube, and then you show up at the beach and surf your wave storm or whatever else. So it's a very different, the surf culture, the direction that the surf culture goes with all these new vowels is very dependent upon people who are creating content. You know, it'll be influenced by the people creating the content.
Yeah. And we're going to step up. I mean, we have, the cool thing is that surfboards by their very nature have history built into them, you know, like the Andy movie that we were talking about that Ashton and Stab did. There's a lot real heavy historical surfboard kind of you know, piece to that, right? And so, you know, it's our job to educate about history and about shapers, and we can do that through some of the greatest rides that ever occurred in surfing, which is what surfing is all about, riding the wave. So yeah.
And surfboards, you're right, like that Andy piece couldn't not talk about surfboards, and obviously the Dick Brewer piece is going to be centered around surfboards. And so that is, I think, the one common denominator among everybody's surf experience.
And this is a great segue real quick for the California Gold Surf Auction, which is taking place. The bidding begins April 2nd. Lots begin closing Friday, April 16th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the California Gold Surf Auction. David, we have boards by Dick Brewer, Barry Kanayapuni, Hobie, Greg Knoll, George Greeno, Al Merrick, Jerry Lopez. You know, I don't have the list in front of me, but the list goes on, and it's an incredible list of historic and significant surfboards. So, California Gold Surf Auction.
Do you find it harder each year to find boards or easier?
Well, what's beautiful is that the cream always rises to the top. So I will have some boards early in the process, and then new, better boards will come, and I will take one board out and replace it with a similar board, but that's a more, you know, has more provenance, has more backstory, you know? So there's a lot of kind of shuffling boards in and out, you know? But I absolutely love it. I think I've told you before, you know, I get to drive up and down the coast and go into people's garages and homes and see these boards and then hear the history behind the board. We just got two boards from Hawaii that are just classic 1930s Waikiki Beach Boy boards
Wow.
that are insane. Like the history behind them is incredible. They're riders. You can tell they were ridden for decades, you know?
Wow.
And yesterday I found myself going down a rabbit hole in Matt Warshaw's Encyclopedia of Surfing, watching videos of Waikiki in 1930. And it was fascinating, you know, and these beach boys riding these boards, these boards, one of them's thin, you know, so I'm like, wow, this is actually a rider. It's kind of light. You know, I was like, this thing, I could see these guys riding these boards. So I went and watched, and I did see these guys riding these boards, and it was really cool. And anyway, we got a bunch of cool boards.
Who are the manufacturers of those boards?
Well, this one was built by a Hawaiian, you know, like this is just a Hawaiian built 1930s Waikiki style. I'm sure that he probably saw the Pacific Systems Homes boards that were over there, and you can tell he made it kind of similar, like just a bunch of pieces of wood laid up with like a nose block and a square tail. And these Hawaiians were just carpenters, you know, 1920s carpenters that were builders, and they just built themselves boards. They're like, look at this, let's make it thinner, you know, and they have dowels in the rails and stuff. And the cool thing is they're well ridden, which I love, you know, and so they have like era specific, you know, patchwork where they've had to do repairs that, you know, they did in like 1942 after they dinged it or some, you know, it's really cool.
Crazy. So I got listener feedback. Remember, maybe I said it, but we talked about it, about the idea of opening a trade school for surfboard builders.
Yes.
Somebody replied he would prefer to stay anonymous, but he said, I have worked in the local surfboard industry most of my life. I eventually started a glass shop with another longtime board builder. We worked 45 plus hours a week doing all the labor ourselves. Our work was very high quality and our prices were on the high side. We were never for a lack of work, and in most cases too busy, even when Clark Foam closed. All that said, none of us ever made more than $60,000 a year. We eventually opened a bigger shop and took on employees. The retro movement glass jobs now became extremely labor intensive, and instead of a board taking a week or less to complete, it now took much longer to complete the glassing process. While we were actually working longer hours at this point and had taken on the extra duties of managing employees, we weren't making any more money. The costs of all this extra work never fairly passed on to the client or the consumer. We still never made more than $60,000 a year. And where I live, the median home price has climbed to $1.2 million. So even if the price of a glass job was doubled, it still wouldn't be, I would still struggle to earn a living. This is a fundamental problem with board building in California. After 30 years of building boards, I could no longer afford to do it. And by the way, he said, as a PS, we were working so much to meet demand that our time in the water surfing suffered greatly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where to begin on that. I'm, you know, part of me is like, well, you know, I guess the cost of living just outpaced the value of being a board builder, you know? I mean, if the home prices are at 1.2 million, you know, does the end consumer bear the responsibility of real estate prices shooting through the roof? You know, there's a lot of moving. Yeah.
The way that I see it is, you have to educate the listener, or not the listener, the consumer, about the value between something being made locally versus something being made overseas. And then the consumer can decide whether or not they want to pay the premium for the locally made thing. And so I think, you know, what he would have to stand on or educate his consumers about, or maybe his sales team or whoever he's laminating boards for, their sales team has to educate about, is in California, we're held to a higher standard of employee practices for health and well-being and all that sort of stuff. We're held to higher disposal, regulations for the EPA and all that sort of stuff. So by paying me $2,000 instead of somebody else $800, you know that the employees make a living wage, they have proper ventilation and respiration, they have health benefits, they have a retirement plan, all this sort of stuff. And so then the consumer kind of understands embedded in all of that is you have a highly trained workforce who's getting paid more than somebody maybe across the border or overseas who is just, replaceable on a daily wage. And a lot of other industries have gone through those efforts to do those things. And
Exactly.
I always think about, like, my buddies are really into cycling, and there's
Yeah.
from the bike brands that they purchase from, you can buy an American made version of the bike. It's $15,000, or you can buy the one that's imported, that's mass produced, and those are $5,000, and it turns out that there's a wait list to get the American made ones,
Well, the problem here is that there's never been a surfboard builders association. They've always been just kind of their own thing. They don't like to get together and sort of go, hey, you guys, we're all doing this. We're all in the same boat. Let's join forces. It's taken a mass influx of overseas boards to even have somebody like Dennis Jarvis or whoever. There's been a few players in this space that have raised their hand and said, hey, you guys, has anyone thought about getting together and joining together and creating an association? And they just, like, if you went to the local factory up there where you're at, or the one where I'm at here, and you said, hey, trying to cobble together an association so we can educate the consumers about what's going on here, they're all going to go, nah, they're all like, I don't know, but,
well,
in many ways, go ahead.
There's a time where you need to realize the guy down the street is no longer your biggest competition, that there's a much larger behemoth that's already taken 50% of your shelf space at the retailer, who is ultimately compromising your way of life. And I don't mean that, like, domestic way of life has more value than foreign way of life, but there's a culture here. Then the culture is kind of what you need to protect. If the culture gets completely eroded by what is just a business being run with employees who don't surf and are replaceable on a daily basis, then that's more valuable than just the $2,000 it costs to buy that more expensive surfboard. The culture is eroding. And when you see guys like, I guess I probably shouldn't name anybody by name, but there are laminators and sanders working locally that have done it for 40 and 50 years who do not have an apprentice working under them. And so that amount of knowledge and legacy will end up just retiring and eventually dying without ever being passed down. And so that's the cultural erosion that we should really be concerned about, more than just saving a few hundred bucks on a surfboard.
Couple things. You've bitten off a big chunk here. First thing I want to ask you is, if we were to role play and we were in this surfboard manufacturing association, and we're like, hey, okay, we've got like 50 of us from the state of California all together. They've asked us to come up with some bullet points, some things that we should educate the public on, the consumer on, and the sales teams on. What's the first target? Who do we really go after? What's our biggest problem? And yeah, I would say we need to focus on the Costco board.
I don't think it's that way at all. I don't think there's any target that we're aiming for. All that we're trying to do is educate the public about what we do really well and the pioneering kind of legacy of California board building. That's it. There's no enemies out there. There's only educating the consumer, and the consumer can then choose what they want to buy. And to be honest,
guess what does that?
What?
The Boardroom Surfboard Show does that. The Boardroom Surfboard Show has been doing that since 2007. That's the main purpose, is to tell people, look, there's nothing more important in our legacy than the surfboard. It defines who we are. And the people that make them are the backbone of the culture, the Dick Brewers of the world, the Marcio Zuvis of the world.
And I think that the consumer will, all things will still exist in that future, the role play future that we just talked about. The consumer will probably have the locally made board, and then they probably have a Costco board or two in the garage for when, kids the kids want to take that to the beach, or family comes over and whatever. And then they probably even have some kind of middle run of the mill, something that was imported as well. I think there's room for everything to exist, but without making those measures, one of those things ends up going away. And unfortunately, it's kind of the most important one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all fleshes out. It's been going on, for quite a while now. And as we mentioned last time, it seems like there's all the big, like diamond glassings are sort of falling off the wayside, and there's a bunch of small little sort of, for lack of a better phrase, ma and pa glass shops popping up. And I think that we'll always see that. I think that we will always see some small glass shops popping up. I think some will fade away, and a new 22-year-old kid will open it up and want to invest his future in this thing that he loves, and God bless him for it,
Yeah. It's very interesting. This all came up organically, but Chaz, I think, wrote an article on Beach Grit about the growth, like a projection that the global surfboard industry will reach 11.5 billion by 2027. So I was like, that sounds outrageous. So I clicked through and kind of read, and it's basically an article that's talking about the growth of China's surfboard production and what it's projected to grow at. And so his numbers are all extrapolations of what it is currently and what the projections are. Ultimately, I don't think it's ever going to get near that. What I was surprised to see was that it said domestic US board building is currently at $2.1 billion. That seems outrageously high to me as well. But
I don't know.
The other thing is, like, I don't see the growth continuing infinitely. You know what I mean? Like, I think we've experienced a boom in the last year or two that everybody's benefiting from, but I don't know how long that can go on.
Well, here's a couple things, right? Is that we have sort of, and Rainbow, Chris will love this, but we sort of have myopic North American blinders on.
Yeah.
And so if Chaz has extrapolated some numbers, I haven't seen the article, but I don't doubt them, because what we need to realize is that the growth of surfboards and surfboard consumers in China and in Southeast Asia and in Asia in general hasn't even started yet. Like, it's going to blow up, and I wouldn't say by 2027, but I bet by 2040, it's going to, the Olympics are going to help this. I think there's a lot of growth. I would suggest to you, North America maybe is kind of like, okay, it just is where it is, and it's healthy, and it's going to kind of stay there, and it might move a little bit one way or the other. But where it's really going to drive forward, I think, is in Asia. I think that's where you're going to, and I don't mean the boards coming over here. I mean the end consumer coming from Asia.
Why do you think that's going to blow up?
Well, I just mentioned, the sport hasn't even, because surfing's a pretty powerful thing. Riding waves. I think that you and I have been infatuated by it since we were 14 years old. And that is going to happen even if you're in a communist state. There's going to be 14-year-olds that are like, and there's already Olympic surfing in China. So it's not like the nation state's going to put too much of who knows what they're going to do with freedom there. But I know that they don't like people meandering and riding waves around their coastline. They're a little concerned about that. But anyway, because there's so many friggin' Chinese people. That's why. And it's sort of there's a lot of capitalism in China, believe it or not.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel, you and I have been obsessed with it because we're very, very fortunate to grow up near a coastline where there's decent waves. And that's such a small percentage of humanity. And even though China has coastline, the waves aren't great. And the resources to actually surf the waves, it comes with a certain level of socioeconomic status,
Yeah. Well, this is a great segue, right? So I got an email from Rainbow, Chris in New Zealand. I don't know if you got this, but he basically said, "Hey, I got to tell you, honestly, you and David are ultra crepidarian, but you're my favorite ultra crepidarians." You want me to tell you what ultra crepidarian means? The definition of this word, ultra crepidarian?
Dying to know.
Okay. Noting or pertaining to a person who criticizes, judges, or gives advice outside the area of his or her expertise.
I agree.
Now, Chris goes on to say, within the Surf Splendor network, the ultra crepidarian list goes like this. There's Chaz. Then there's a big gap. Then there's Scott, David, Tyler, Jamie, another gap, and then there's Matt Warshaw, who is an associate. So Chaz apparently is the hugest ultra crepidarian. And I asked him, I said, Rainbow, how big is the gap between me and Chaz? I need to know. And he goes, the gap is vast. It's so large, I can't really even explain, but trust me, it's a big gap. So there's Chaz and then there's the rest of us.
That's very, very funny.
Yeah.
I like it. It's part of, like, I mean, it probably goes without saying, but, or I'll ask you actually, do you play up a role on the podcast?
No, I mean, look, I am who I am. I'm
Really?
the first one to say, yeah, I'm the first one to say, I'm not here to put a spin on who I am. I'm an open book. I can tell by your hairdo.
I'm here to put a spin on who I am. I mean, I am a version of myself on the podcast, but I mean, the views that I espouse privately are different than the ones. I mean, oftentimes I will just take the opposite stance of you, just for the sake of making it a better conversation or a better podcast, you know, and then argue wholeheartedly that stance, something that I don't necessarily apply in my real life or believe in my real life.
Oh, so you're a liar. You've basically taken the integrity out of this entire podcast. People are running from us right now. Is
it a lie or is it entertainment, Scott? I'm an entertainer. Watch my song and dance.
Oh my Lord.
And then sign this contract. Send me your money.
Are you ready for my quiz?
I guess, yeah.
Or did I segue too quickly from this conversation?
I wanted to ask you about your podcast, but we can come back to it. Let's do this.
Okay. Now the question is, how do we do this so that the listeners get a chance to respond, or is that just not going to happen? Why don't I save one of the questions? Well, no, the thing is that then they can just Google it. So that's no good. Okay. Here's the first question, David, for you. This is our spit surf quiz. Which surfer first paddled out and rode Waimea Bay? You're not going to get it.
I'm not?
I don't think so. Unless you're Googling right now.
I'm not Googling right now. I'm trying to think of what era this would have even been. I mean, the first name that I kind of thought of was Fred Hemmings, but he couldn't have been the first because he's not old enough. What can you give me an era?
Yeah, it's probably the late 50s, mid to late 50s.
George Downing?
Well, a quiet Long Beach lifeguard named Harry Skirch had been out all alone by himself a couple of hours earlier than the day that Greg Knoll and a crew of 7 or 8 guys paddled out. So Greg Knoll and this crew of guys paddled out and are widely touted as the first crew that conquered Waimea, that rode a wave there. There had been 2 guys that paddled down from Sunset Beach when it was maxing, and one of them died and the other one barely made it to shore. But they didn't ride a wave.
Paddled from Sunset to Waimea, just trying to find somewhere to get in?
To get in, yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, Dickie Cross passed away, and there was another guy who, you can go into Matt's website and find the.
I was going to say, you found all this when you were looking for your surfboard info?
I spend a lot of time enjoying Matt Warshaw's Encyclopedia of Surfing. It's engaging. So this lifeguard, Harry Skirch, was out before these guys. He was the first guy to ride a wave there. Some are saying, hey, well, it was smaller. It hadn't quite come up that much, but it was the same morning. So, I mean, how much smaller could it have been?
And
anyway,
honestly, even just the balls to paddle out there and be the first to do something is worth noting.
By yourself?
Yeah.
All alone?
Yeah.
The thing about that question is nobody's going to, really throw that name out. That's kind of a trick question almost. But yeah.
It's a name I'd never heard of before, but we should just start using that name because it's it's our responsibility to educate the youth, the vow.
Yes.
Harry Scourge from my hometown, by the way.
Long Beach. I would like for people, and that includes us, to do a little bit more research on Harry Scourge and this whole story, actually, because like I said, it's widely reported in our culture that Greg Knoll and this crew of guys, which included Mickey Munoz and some other guys, were the first ones that said, because for a long time they were like, holy shit, this place kills people. Dickie Cross died here. The other gentleman barely made it alive. It put a real kind of spooky vibe on Waimea for a long time, that there had been a death there, that's where you go to die. And finally they looked at it and it was perfect. And they're like, you know what? And it was only a 15-foot day. It wasn't like huge macking Waimea. They're like, let's go try it, and they went out and did it. But before they did that, Harry Scourge was out there.
How is Scourge spelled?
It's like S Church, Schurch.
Got it. What if Harry Scourge is still alive? What if he lives in Long Beach and he's 20 minutes down the road from me and I could interview him?
That would be sick. I would love that. I hope that's the case.
Okay.
Here's next question. What is the nickname of big wave Hawaiian surfer James Jones?
JJ.
Good. That was a good shot in the dark. Booby Jones. James Booby Jones.
Do you want to explain?
Here's one
why?
That's more.
No, explain why. Are there photos?
I don't know why. James Jones has been a part of me. Like, I've known about James Booby Jones since I was 14 years old. He was in all of the magazines that I read.
Is it a reference to his physique?
He's a stud. He's a full-on legendary big wave surfer. Underrated.
So the booby doesn't have to do with his physique. Maybe he booby trapped somebody.
I don't know the reasoning. I don't know the.
Do a deeper dive. Do a deeper dive into that EOS.
That just means emailing Matt. That's all that means. A deeper dive.
Hey, you know what I always wonder?
Yeah.
Like with Harry Scourge, if I just said to Matt today, hey, who's the first guy to surf Waimea? Does his brain actually remember all the information that he has cataloged?
Let's find out.
Dial him up.
Or does he do an EOS search? Are you suggesting that he does an EOS search?
I would just be amazed. I mean, look, I've talked to him enough that I should probably just say yes.
He would.
Yeah, he does. Know. He seems to have that encyclopedic knowledge.
Yeah, especially this one, because this one's one of those tricky ones where he'd go, oh, you might be thinking Greg Knoll, but it's actually.
Right.
Yeah. This one's more contemporary. Hopefully the listeners will get this one. This is a little easier. In May of 2005, in the final heat of the Billabong Tahiti Pro Contest at Chopu, Kelly Slater became the first surfer ever to be awarded 2 perfect scores for a total of 20 out of 20 points under the ASP 2-wave scoring system. Which surfer did he defeat in the finals?
Bruce Irons.
That's it. You got it. Yeah.
Thank goodness.
I wanted to give you an easier one.
Thank you. I've been outed as a liar and a not knowing surf history.
Right.
Lost all my credibility here.
I know. We need to name this special podcast. Okay, this one's kind of difficult, but it should be one that you get. So there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 surfers that make up the Momentum generation. Taylor Steele's famous movie Momentum. These are the 10 surfers that were featured in the film. No way.
I'm just writing them down. I'm writing them down. That's all.
Okay. Go ahead. Name the 10, or maybe you should just name 8 of the 10.
I could certainly, I think I already wrote down 8. So I've got Kelly,
yes.
Rob Machado,
yes.
Shane Dorian, Ross Williams, Kalani Robb.
Oh, I don't have Ross on this list. I don't have Ross, I don't think. I don't see him. Okay, go ahead. So there's 11.
Kalani Robb,
Right,
Taylor Knox,
right.
Benji Weatherly,
Yep,
Pat O'Connell,
yep.
and the Malloy brothers.
No. So
You can't
according
not
to,
have the Malloys.
well, I'm just saying.
Okay, then
Then-
let me keep going. That's whatever that is. 8.
Yeah,
So you asked for 10,
yeah, without Ross Williams.
but I already said Pat O'Connell.
Yeah. There's one that's kind of a wild card, but it's definitely one of the guys.
Huh.
Greg Browning.
Yeah, Greg Browning. Okay. I loved Greg.
And
Greg's
then
layback.
Also on this list is Donovan Frankenreiter
Yeah, he's a gimme.
and Conan Hayes.
Yeah.
Those are the two that kind of are ones that are hard to get, I think.
So I will say in that movement, there were guys who had their own section and there were guys that they crammed into a section together. And that was a revolving cast of characters, whether it was Momentum, Focus, Good Times, and all the films that came after those.
This is specifically the first movie.
Okay.
This question. This is
Okay.
specifically the first movie. And I saw a picture that Steve Sherman posted on Instagram of those guys. And I was like, God, there was one guy I go, who is that guy? I thought it was maybe Trevor Christ. But I sent a direct message to Shermy. I'm like, hey, who's this guy? And he goes, that's Benji Weatherly. I didn't recognize Benji. And then I go, well, who's missing? And he threw out, well, no, I don't think he threw out any other name. Or no, he gave me Pat O'Connell, who wasn't in the picture. And he gave me Kalani Robb, who wasn't in the picture. But yeah. Ross Williams wasn't in there, and he needs to be. And the Malloys, I think, are more about Taylor Steele movies that followed, but I could be wrong.
You're right. They might not have been in that original one, but they were in every subsequent one. Timmy Curran joined the cast right after, but he was younger, so he didn't kind of fit the same generational narrative.
You know what? This is a great time for us to talk about eBay sneakers.
Perfect, Scott. Enjoy your bathroom break.
And now back to the podcast.
Your mobility looks fluid this week. Have you been working on staying active, doing yoga?
I have been, actually. I've been trying to keep it going for sure.
Yeah, good. You were talking last week about getting stiff if you sit for too long. You looked spry.
Yeah, thanks. I'm still getting stiff, but yeah. You mentioned a couple of things. You wanted to talk about my podcast or something?
We'll get to that, but you were talking about Pat O'Connell as part of the Momentum generation. Huge news from Pat O'Connell this week.
Yes, yes.
Pat O'Connell, Pat O'Connell comes to the Florence from the, I'm sorry. Okay. I forgot what I was reading. This is the press release. I should explain what this is before I read it. This is a press release from Florence Marine X. Do you know what Florence Marine X is, Scott?
I know that it's like a brand that John Florence is about, and it's the guys from Kandui, the Hurley brothers from Kandui, who run it.
Very good. So when the Hurley family, Bob and his sons, left the Hurley brand because of the Nike and subsequent buyouts and takeovers, they formed a little holding group called Kandui, and they purchased a shoe brand, Simple, and they're launching a couple of other brands within that LLC. John Florence announced 1 year ago that he would be launching his own clothing line that is kind of catering to the surf community, but also the sailing community. It's outdoor, on the water, or in the water clothing, technical gear and clothing. So that was a year ago. We never have seen any products. We've seen John's logo. We've seen John putting the sticker on his board, but a lot of time has transpired without seeing any plan or any products. The latest news came this week in a press release from the company, and it says Pat O'Connell comes to Florence from the World Surf League, where he was the SVP, head of tours and competition, responsible for overseeing the development of all of the WSL's various tours. Prior, Pat was the VP of sports marketing for Hurley, where he architected the most dominant surf athlete program in the sport's history. Pat said, "I couldn't be more excited to work with John and his team and create the brand that will inspire people and to get out and explore. We have an incredible opportunity to do things different with Florence Marine X, and the future of the brand looks incredibly bright." John Florence himself said, "I'm incredibly thankful to have Pat come aboard. We have a great history working together, and I'm really excited for the road ahead." What are your thoughts, Scott?
My thoughts are Pat O'Connell made the best move he's ever made. Probably, this is awesome for him. The potential is through the roof for this brand, for the idea that it's not surf specific, that it's kind of speaks more to the adventuring outdoors, 20 something, individual that's ready to go do stuff, whether it's sailing or mountain biking or surfing or foiling or whatever it is. So I love the demographic that I think that they're attacking. I love the potential of not being just sort of surf specific, that they're opening up their the inclusivity for the brand. I just think it's awesome. And this is the type of gig that could lead to Pat O'Connell, leading some massive brand in the future, like going to Nike or something like that. Like this in 10 years, this is a really cool thing. And I'll be the first one to sign up for Florence Marine X. I'm right in their demographic wheelhouse. I'm doing all sorts of stuff outside besides surfing, and I think it's cool.
I do too. And the one thing I don't love is the name Florence Marine X. And I think that they've heard that feedback, and I don't know that they even care or that they'll ever change it. But that's the one hiccup I have with all of this. I don't like seeing it on paper. I don't like saying it out loud. It's just a mouthful, right? And I love Florence and I love Marine, and X is cool, but it's just too much. So that's my only hiccup here. It's a superficial one. Everything else I love about it. The fact that these people have worked together for decades now and have achieved the highest levels of our sport, both in terms of winning world titles, both in terms of kind of brand expansion and taking over, and still staying core despite the corporate buyout. Everybody made money along the way. They have the recipe for success. And I think that they're doing things now on their own terms, which is super important. And you said you design this trajectory for Pat O'Connell to take over the world. To be honest, I don't think that's Pat's plan. I don't think that was ever Pat's plan. I think Pat puts just as much time and energy and effort into living a lifestyle that he wants to live. And this probably fits that objective more than some corporate gig could. And I see all good things.
I didn't, all I'm suggesting is this sets him up for something like that. I wasn't suggesting that this was Pat's plan. I wasn't suggesting this was a stepping stone towards the presidency. I'm just saying that there's so much upside here that if this brand grows into the thing that I think it will, there's going to be plenty of headhunters that are going to be like, "Hey, are you interested in that? Are you interested in this?" And in 10 years, he could be like, "Yeah, well, let me try this over here or this over there." I'm just saying that he's going to have people calling on him is all I'm saying.
I know. And I didn't say that you said that. And I didn't think you came across that way. And by the way, Pat, I didn't say from that press release, but he is the president. He's joining the company as the president of the company. And I actually don't foresee this becoming a $100 or $200 million company. I don't know their goals. They have not expressed that to me. So I'm just speaking from opinion, but I could see them just kind of comfortably, being a medium-sized company. You don't think so? You think they're going to try to blow up?
Well, every company tries to blow up. That's what capitalism is.
I
think it is.
That's 100% not true.
Are you telling me that there's companies that are like, "No, we don't want any more sales"?
Yes.
Sales are bad.
Yes.
Who? Name it. Name the company.
I don't want to name them, but I've had those conversations with those companies, and it's
don't want sales?
Listen to me. You're saying it wrong. There's an understanding that to go to national distribution through Nordstrom or Macy's, you have to change your entire business model. You have to give tons of freebies. You have to take back product that compromises your bottom line tremendously. So with this specific product that they're talking about, at $20 million, you can sell through core retail and through e-com, and you can manage all of that, and your profitability is actually higher than if you make the leap to the next level, shift that business model, accommodate all of the needs of those giant retailers. You end up actually profiting less money at the end of the year. That's a real stat.
Okay. All right.
So
I find that hard to believe, but I mean, I believe
it's
the
the truth.
paradigms. I believe the paradigms that you're suggesting. And I believe that they probably believe that in their heart. But at some point in time, when things are going so good, you get external pressures from even though you're still a private company, and there's people that are like, hey, like we can, and who's to say, by the way, that you can't expand sales and keep that model? Like, who's to say you have to go to this next leap? Like you're suggesting,
the people who have done it, the people who have done it,
those are old paradigms that are
I'm
different.
telling you,
we're in a different age.
I'm telling you, the people that we are specifically talking about have done it, and they've made those negotiations and compromises in the past. And they're setting up a model right now where they can live the lifestyle that they want to live, hire the people they want to hire. Everybody can make a healthy living doing it, and they can make the products they want for the people that they want to make them for. And I think that's the equation. And time will tell. Maybe 10 years from now, we'll be talking and you'll be like, see, they're in Nordstrom now and they're in Macy's. And I'm not saying they have to be in Nordstrom or Macy's. I'm just saying that they can keep the model and build it out and things are changing. Like, we don't know how this whole thing is going to play out in the digital space. And I just think that businesses that turn away sales because of some mission statement that they created 8 years ago are changing their mission statement. And maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, if ever there was a time where we're both ultra crepitarians, I think it's now. Congratulations to Pat. I think this is a great move. I think Pat's just made good move after good move. Like when he moved from Hurley to the WSL, we were scratching our heads, not questioning the move, but wondering what we didn't know was going on at Hurley. And we found out a year later. So he saw that writing on the wall, or had that information in advance. And he, was able to diversify his resume by working at the WSL, and put some good events on the schedule, by the way. They didn't come to fruition, but they were on the schedule in 2019. And now he's making another great move that I think will support his lifestyle, and he'll get to work with people that he loves. And it just seems Pat is so likable. He's so great. Everybody wants to work with Pat. And so I think it's good to see good people, do well and thrive. So
absolutely. Congratulations to Pat. By the way, somebody sent me yesterday, just randomly, an Amazon link, and I opened it, and you could get Hurley beard tonic.
Oh yeah.
You could get Hurley's men's lotion fragrances and Hurley suntan lotion.
Yep.
Like they've fully gone the way of moving that brand, licensing that name.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy.
By the way, there was one question I forgot to ask you.
Okay.
In the quiz, in the spit quiz. How many operational open to the public wave pools exist right now today where you and I could go and surf?
Great question. I've thought about this often because they pop up faster than I can keep track of. I'm going to say 12.
No, pretty close, excuse me. There's 8 of them.
I was going to say 8.
There's Kelly.
And I upped it.
Yeah, there's Kelly Surf Ranch. There's the BSR Surf Ranch in Texas, Waco. There's American Dream, which I don't even know where that exists. There's the Adventure Park Snowdonia, the very first one. There's the Wave. There's Wave Park, and there's Urban Surf. There's also Alaya Bay, which opens this June in Switzerland in the Alps. So those 8 include one that's opening in a couple of months.
I think American Dream is in New Jersey.
I do too. I think that's what I was thinking.
Okay.
The Wave is in Bristol, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Wave Park must be Wave Park.
Wave Park.
Is that part of? Is that like one of maybe?
I can't. Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing.
Anyway.
Some of them, their names are so generic that they all just blend together. You know what I mean?
Which one's the best name?
Surf Ranch.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Because it's a whole theme, you know, it's a cowboy theme and it's in cowboy country.
Yeah.
Speaking of Surf Ranch, Kelly Slater has been surfing up a storm in Hawaii.
I got some skinny on Slater from somebody who was over in Hawaii this week and had dinner with some people that are very close to the situation.
Go on.
I know that, did you just do a grit with Chaz and talk about this, by the way?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Or, I mean, we did an episode on Friday, but I don't think we talked about it.
Because Chaz has been, well, you and I have been in on some of this, right?
You and I did a deep dive last week.
Yeah. But I mean, there's been some Instagram fodder of direct messaging that you and I have seen.
Oh, yeah.
So this is what I got from my friend. He said, hey, I got the skinny on Slater. He is here in Hawaii rehabbing, did not go to Australia because of the WSL would not allow him to see his doctor or physical therapist during quarantine. And he felt 14 days without treatment would be too much for him to come over there. He is planning on surfing in the second half of the Australian events if Australia opens up restrictions, which they are supposed to do by early April. His injuries are real. They're not so much worse than reported, but they're just keep going on and on and on.
And somebody also messaged me saying it's actually a hip injury. I know they talked about his foot injury from Jay Bayer. That's what he cited. But the current injury that wasn't cited is more of a hip injury that he's treating. So.
Yeah, look, the knee bone's connected to the tailbone, you know, like at this age, you know, things just act up and then they move around and, you know, he's not as sprightly young as he once was, but I mean, if anyone has the resources to sort of, therapy away all the issues, maybe get into like a cryogenic bath every morning and drink the Laird coffee and get up and do all of the different stuff that's available to top level athletes, it's Kelly Slater. So, and in my podcast with Joe, I was surprised, Joe Turpel. So I interviewed Joe Turpel in the Boardroom podcast. It was almost as if he had information that he wasn't kind of quite telling me, but it sounded very optimistic that Kelly's going to be over there, maybe even for Narrabeen, which, is 3 weeks away. So you could see 3 weeks of rehab helping Slater be there and drop into the Narrabeen event, missing Newcastle. And because as you mentioned, which is just, sort of the big, the white elephant in the room, or the elephant in the room, is that he's in third place right now and he's competitive as shit. And if he's going to win a 12th, it could very well happen this season.
Yeah. And we don't know how many events will ultimately run, but if they throw away 2 scores like they normally do in a regular season, then he could just throw away Newcastle and presumably surf well in the future events and get in that top 5 and have a shot at lowers. It's not crazy.
No, it's not. No.
So, yeah, I mean, so I posted footage from Surfline that I pulled from Surfline of him surfing Waimea shorebreak of all things. You know what I mean? It's kind of like,
yeah.
It's like, come on, dude. Like if you were filing a workman's comp thing at work and they got footage of you doing this, you'd get fired and you'd lose your comp benefits. Like
it's not like he's some benign Waikiki soft roller.
Exactly. He's like, yeah, I didn't feel great, so I ate it on a couple, and it cuts to him dropping into a double up overhead left and like hitting the bottom flat, like completely just absorbing all the shock of the impact in his straight body. Like it didn't look good. But how are you going to keep a guy out of the water, whether he calls in sick or not? Like he's going to surf.
He got some good ones too. There was one really good one that he got, right? Where he got spit out.
I mean, that would have been the wave of my life, dude. And it's just like,
no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
But it's funny. It's fun to poke and prod. So Joe Turpel, he's so affable. Like I only listened to the first half. I had to pause it and I never ended up going back, but are you guys best friends? It sounds like you're best friends. From the moment you push record, he is everybody's best friend.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as my little intro into the podcast stated, he's just a genuinely kind human being, you know. And some people I was talking to my wife about it. Some people are just sort of blessed with like this grace of kindness and love, you know, like it's in their spirit. And you know, people like this. I know people like this, and Joe's one of those people like this, you know, that are just, they're just go, God, that's a good person, you know, and they exist, and Joe's one of them. And so, are we best friends? No. Last time I spoke with him, as mentioned, was 10 years ago when Baldy and I were doing our radio show in San Diego. We had him on, and anyway.
But
he's just a good guy.
even that he remembered and called out like it was yesterday. He knew exactly which hotel he was staying in when you talked and what he did the very next day. It, you know,
I
makes
had no
you
idea.
feel. I know it makes, but he made you feel, and I felt for you.
Yeah.
You're the most important person in the world right now. He's talking to you.
Exactly.
You're the most important person in the world.
Exactly. So. That's an incredible quality to have. That's like, if there's one thing any listener should take away from this or that podcast, is that ability to make people remember you because you're such a nice human being.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you said, how you make somebody feel about themselves says a lot about you, you know, and his goal is generally to make people feel good about themselves.
But I see the thing is, I don't think it's a goal. See, I just think it's a natural. It's not like he doesn't set out to do that. That's the beauty, is that it's sincere. You know, it's not like this, oh, I'm going to make them feel good about themselves.
No, it's a state of being.
Right.
So I've spent, dude, recording podcasts is exhausting, by the way.
I've got one later today. I'm interviewing PT. He's going to be at my house in 2 hours.
That'll wear you out. But yeah. two a days are freaking brutal. And so anyways, I've been interviewing some of the
who have you done so far?
Some of the athletes in quarantine. I did Lakey Peterson and Connor Coffin last week. I did Sage Erickson yesterday. I've got Connor O'Leary later today. And then Jordy is agreed to do it, but he needed a couple of days for what I don't know. He's busy. And then, so I'm going to try to connect later in the week, but he's all in. So hopefully that comes together. I don't promise anything until like it's actually in the can, but it's so fascinating, right? Like you really get a understanding for somebody's headspace, or even ability. I could predict the future of these people's career after having one conversation with them, is what I will say.
Of course. That's because you were ultra crepitarian.
Exactly. But for example, like Sage, okay, so I go into an interview with Lakey Peterson, and I can ask her, who is your biggest threat to winning a world title? And she has an answer to that question, because she's at that top level where she's isolating, you know. And then with Sage, it's like, shoot, that's not a fair question. Who is your biggest threat to winning a world title? Because there isn't just one person, right? But furthermore, she just offers up, you know, I don't know that I even see myself winning a world title. And I'm like, what? And I'm not offended by it. I was just shocked to hear her say it, you know? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, you know, like, honestly, it's not the most important thing in the world to me. And I can see the women who are winning world titles, that it is the only reason for existence. And I don't know, it's just not that way for me.
That's weird, man.
I know.
Weird.
I know. So
I mean, even if she feels like that, she shouldn't say that. There's got to be some handler that's like, don't say that. I
don't know that I agree with you. I thought that initially when she said it, but as I thought about it, I thought, you know, being authentic, being authentic is really all that matters. And so I'd rather have her be authentic and tell me her truth, and she can win a few events like she does. She wins events. She stays on tour. She's relatable. Everybody loves her. Isn't that valuable too? Like, and I don't want her to lie and be like, I've got the eye of the tiger. I did 40 push-ups before I took this call, and I'm going to take out the next. I'm okay with her being authentic.
But do you think is it a psychological strategy? Like, is it her way of of going, I don't want to set expectations too high. I'd rather kind of build up to it.
It could be, but I don't think it is for her. And I think with somebody like Jack Robinson, he keeps his cards close to his vest. You never hear him being overly confident. We know quietly that he just knows that he can take everybody out, and with Sage, I didn't feel like it was any of that. It was her putting her heart on her sleeve and just being like, look, I have all these other interests in life, and you guys worried about winning this trophy is a little bit silly, but I'm also competitive and I'll win an event here and there. That's kind of the vibe that I got. And I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed her. I think she's amazing. And her surfing has value, and she holds women to account on tour when she draws them in a heat, so like there's lots of value there. I was just shocked to hear it. And some similar sentiments from Connor Coffin too, to be honest. Yeah. So it's fascinating.
I just want to catch a few waves and have fun and experience this part of my life, and whatever happens. Right?
I mean,
you got?
different, but similar,
Yeah.
And so it's just, again, I recognized it off a lot in prep for the conversation, that the preps I have for Jordy are very different.
This is very interesting. So the Jordy one's the one that's most interesting to me personally, right? Because I think we both feel like it's I don't know if it's now or never, but it's within the next couple of years, right? For Jordy. And I don't know how did he do at Pipe? Do you have that in your notes anywhere? Okay, so he's got a fifth. That's not bad. That's a keeper, right? And I talked to Joe about this because Joe was really high on Jordy. Because I asked Joe, I go, who's your top 5 at lowers? I go, David and I determined who our top 5 are going to be. Who are your top? And he threw Jordy in the mix. And I kind of was like, well, look, he's got to go to Newcastle. That's not necessarily Jordy Smith's wave relative to, I mean, you could see Caio or a million other hot Brazilians doing really well there and taking Jordy out. Then Marabine, that's also a wild card. So that sort of speaks to, we hope it's big at Margaret River, and who knows what's going to happen at Rottnest. And then he's got to deal with Lemoore. So it seems like Jordy's got a lot of stuff built up against him, is all I was suggesting to Joe and to you. So I hope you bring that up in the conversation. That, it seems like the cards are stacked against him.
And to second your point, Rio isn't a strength for him. Chopu isn't a strength for him, and those are still on the schedule, whether or not they run. He has said he's too tall and big for Surf Ranch. And so, yeah, you can wash that one away. I mean, he's got to put all of his money on winning Margaret's and maybe Rottnest.
Yeah. Good luck. I mean, with John at Margaret River. The whole tour is actually kind of fascinating. You and I have spoken about it, but there's so much pressure on each and every event. Yeah. And when you think about like somebody like Julian Wilson, who didn't do well at Pipe, there's got to be a lot of pressure on him to go to Newcastle and beat, all these kind of younger QS guys that are now on tour that have been battling out in waves like Newcastle. So anyway, go ahead. It's going to be fascinating. I think.
The good news.
I'm actually looking forward to watching shitty Newcastle to just see because there's instantly a ton of. It feels like every event is pressure packed.
Yeah, I guess so. And the good news specific to Julian is a lot of his free surf clips come from Newcastle. Like he surfs Newcastle.
He's living there now.
Yeah. So he might have an advantage there, make up for lost ground at Pipe.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, I got to kind of get into wrap up mode. I've got to move on with my day.
Yeah.
You're up early baking bread before we even podcast together.
Oh yeah.
What time do you wake up?
That's proprietary information, but I can't reveal it this time, but I may let you know later.
10 minutes earlier every year, or 30 minutes earlier every year. Are you on the 4:30 program yet?
Maybe.
Get up, bake some bread for the house, record a podcast, and go surfing.
Oh, when you wake up in the morning and there's bread baking, the smell of the home, it's incredible.
It really is. Hey, I got a question for you. I don't know why I thought about this recently. It was actually a couple of weeks ago. You said something that made me think about, where do you, once your kids are out of the house, where would you like to retire?
Oh, wow.
Have you thought about it?
Oh yeah. So there's this ball and chain that's attached to me, which is surfing, right? Which is the ocean, which is problematic for retiring unless you're extremely wealthy or even a little bit wealthy, right? It's hard to, so part of me is like, I would like to go somewhere, like Montana or Idaho or Utah or somewhere just kind of, or Colorado, somewhere beautiful that's got some space, not much, maybe even the Eastern Washington area, and just get some space and have a cool little home and some space and not be worried about surfing anymore or catching waves. That's 15 years down the road here, but something like that. Or there's Mexico. Is there somewhere warm? Somewhere warm makes a lot of sense. Somewhere in Mexico. And frankly, there's nothing wrong with retiring right here in North San Diego County. It's a pretty beautiful place.
What about Hawaii?
Maybe Hawaii's certainly a place to consider. Hawaii's kind of crowded. It's kind of hard to, I don't know if I could muster up enough resources to get a nice big place in Hawaii where it's, you want, if you're going to move from here, you want space.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. But then there's tax issues. There's Texas, which I guess is just sick and tired. All of these places I mentioned are like, God, not another Californian. Like there's all these stories in the news about Montana and Idaho and Texas, and they don't want any more Californians.
Yeah.
But there's a reason they're moving there, and it's because income tax is a big deal. That's why people move to Texas and Florida. There's no income tax, so their retirement savings doesn't get taxed.
Right. Well,
it's a big deal.
I don't know why I thought about that with you. I think we were talking about maybe some surfboard shapers who had retired or something. And I was like, man, that's got to be on your at least 10-year kind of horizon, 10, 15-year horizon, something you start thinking about. And yeah, with surfing, it's does limit your options. Well, do you have a must-see moment?
I have watched a lot of good stuff. Somebody sent me this really good, I need to bring it up, but there's this really good bodyboarding video that's got Noah Dean.
Drag.
Yeah, have you seen Drag? Yeah. Drag. That's insane. That's got to be my must-see moment. Yeah. Everyone needs to watch Drag. It's on YouTube. It's got Noah Dean. It's got a bunch of surfers like Mitch Colburn, right? And it's an hour-long thing, but there's a lot of comedy in it. It's pretty cool. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing. It's so long, but it's good. And I'm way behind this week. I didn't watch the latest installment of Billy or Andy Irons and the Radicals, so I got some catch up to do. What I will say is that among all the surfers in quarantine, the Colapinto brothers are cracking me up. Are you following them?
I'm not. No.
They've got their filmer with them. I don't know what his name is, and he's just
Tanner.
I don't know, but he's crushing it with content, just like all day, every day, just editing and posting. And those kids are a riot. So follow the Colapinto brothers if you want to laugh.
By the way, we spoke about Crosby as a wild card, and Joe sort of backed that up. Be on the lookout for Crosby Colapinto to do some damage. I don't know Crosby that much, but everything I'm hearing is that he's a big, large, strong guy. And he's young and sprightly still. So look out for Crosby.
And his sparring partners are all C-tiers. So he's familiar. I don't know that he'll experience the nerves that somebody else would. And I don't see him winning an event, but I could see him winning a few heats and taking out some
doing damage
vulnerable people.
Oh yeah.
A Jordy or Julian who come in and just kind of overlook him, and he posts 2/8,
Exactly.
So yeah, lots to look forward to. Idolo Ferreira is looking.
Oh my God. Have you been? He went live. Did you watch him go live?
No.
So he went live on Instagram a couple of days ago, and I turned it on immediately. And he's got the boom box. I put it on my Instagram story. He's got the boom box. He's going, and he's got the DJ below him on a split screen who's sang the song or made the music or whatever. And the DJ is just all, and they're all talking Portuguese. And Idolo's just going, he's just going crazy, And I'm like, oh my, this is over the top. But I screen captured it and put it on there. But Idolo wins quarantine for sure.
And looks so fit. Like he did this wall climb thing where it's like it's almost like a push-up, and then you just lift your feet onto the wall, and
Yeah.
then you walk your feet up the wall, do a push-up again, walk your feet up the wall, do a push-up again, walk your feet up until you're completely vertical, doing a handstand against the wall. And then he does a backflip somehow. Actually, for that one, I think that one he just like goes down onto the ground. But there's another one where he finishes the exercise, stands up, does a full backflip, just a standing backflip. And you're just like, what?
I saw that.
Like, what in the world? The guy is on the next level.
Somebody mentioned something that I think is really, really important. And it's this thing that quarantine has done is we are closer to the surfers than we've ever been. A lot of it is due to guys like you who are doing these interviews. Joe Trappell's doing some quarantine interviews. And I feel like a whole different layer of understanding of who these surfers are has come to light. And it's something that needs to continue without quarantine. The WSL would be silly to not almost mandate that these guys do podcasts, a certain number of podcasts, or like we can't not know what's going through these people's heads. The fact that you got Sage Erickson to say what she said, this type of thing is going to drive the attention of the WSL and the need for the public to be intrigued by it. It can't just be this person who we don't know in a red jersey got 2 8s. It 100%. Has to be. I know we've been speaking about this for years, but now it's like we've seen it come to light. You know, like I had the other day I had Felipe, Kaio, a filmer named Tanner, and Leo, all in 4 screens on a live Instagram feed, and I was just sitting there listening to them go, and they were just talking to each other, and there was so much. I learned all of a sudden I'm like fans. I'm a bigger fan of Kaio than I ever was. I've always been a fan of Kaio's, by the way, but you know. This guy, I was almost like, we should start a GoFundMe page for Kyle. But anyway, It's pretty interesting what's quarantine and Instagram Live has done to reveal these people's personalities, and it needs to continue.
I agree. Tanner is Kanoa Igarashi's filmer, if it's the same Tanner I'm thinking of.
Yeah, like I learned about Kanoa Igarashi from Tanner. Do you know who his favorite surfer is forever?
Kanoa?
Just some.
I do.
Yeah.
Julian Wilson.
No, there's some random Brazilian guy that is, if they were all talking about him, they were like, yeah, that for like 5 years, that's all Kanoa could focus on was this one guy. And I forget his name, but I'm sure now it might be Julian now, but forever Leo and the filmer, and they were all going, oh yeah. And then they got into like a deep dive on red hot Brazilian guys that no one knows about, you know, which was kind of interesting.
Man, I'm dying to know who that Brazilian surfer was.
I'm sorry, Tanner would throw it out or Leo.
Was he a competitor that we like saw for a bit?
Oh yeah.
Heitor Alves.
He was like it might have been. I want to say it started with an M, but
oh yeah, it's not going to come to me.
Yeah, it was
something that rung a bell. Okay, well, at any rate, more to come throughout this week and next. Newcastle waiting period starts April 1st, so I'll see you twice before then. We owe a shout out, of course, as always, to the one sponsor who's been with us for years and kept us in business. Need Essentials.
Yeah, man, Need Essentials. I got all their gear. God, it was so cold the other night, that night where I had soup out at Seaside Market, and I had my full-on puffy, like super warm Need Essentials.
The one with the hood?
And
I've been wearing that.
Super warm winter one.
I've been wearing that thing on dog walks in the morning, like before 7 a.m. Not only is it warm, but you know, the hood is like a noise canceller. I cannot wear the hood because I can't hear cars coming, and I can't, like, it's debilitates my senses, and it goes just around the periphery to where I just have tunnel vision. So the hood, while it serves a purpose on the mountain and for warmth, cannot hear cars coming. It's a noise canceling hood.
It is super warm, and I'm a big fan of that jacket, the big warm wintertime puffy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've said it before in the past, so maybe we don't need to, but it's been a while. Need Essentials. It is the premium quality without any of the fuss. It's all one color, black, kind of an off blue, dark blue, almost black. No hang tags, no retailer, no middleman. So what that amounts to is it's half the price of what you would pay for from a premium brand that you see in retail, but it's still the same exact quality, premium quality for half the price. NeedEssentialsUSA.com in the US, NeedEssentials.com elsewhere. And wetsuits, board shorts, outerwear for the mountain, all that stuff. Grip, traction, sunblock now, leashes, booties, everything you need.
Absolutely. Big fan of Need Essentials, and I send friends there all the time
Me too.
to get their stuff.
Yeah. All right, Scott, next week, see you again.
Yeah, next week. Until next time, adios and aloha.